You notice we have a poster up on the wall that sort of captures something of early. There's a kind of context setting that probably should happen about this experience as earlies, because this is a kind of odd thing for earlies to be doing. For several reasons, but I think maybe we'll just play back and forth with it a little bit. One is so much of what's important from an early place isn't verbal, and here we're verbal language is sort of what we're being asked to communicate from. Another piece is really the whole piece of being on stage, which for certain kinds of things, for certain earlies, like doing music on stage in the right context can be cool for an early, but for the most part, unless an early feels some sense of connection with a context, being on stage, I mean, one, doesn't feel that good, but two, it's a little bit like, I can't translate what's important to me to communicate in that context. So we're going to maybe a place to start is, why don't each of you say something about your, just say your name in a little bit of context so we're getting to know each other a bit, but we'll probably talk a lot to each other rather than to you, for example. But let's also say a little bit of just what it feels like to be here, and we'll sort of improv it from there.
I'm Lane Gerber. I'm a psychologist. I teach at Seattle University and have a practice and work with refugees in the community. This feels strange to me. When I heard especially the Lates talking, using all the nuances, just all the words. There's something about words that for me, even as a university professor, I have a sort of love-hate relationship with words. I write poetry, I write articles, and then also many times if somebody asks me a question, there are no words to say to them. And I was afraid that this was going to be one of those experiences of here we are in front of everybody, and say what an early is, I don't have a clue, or at least nothing that fits easily into a word.
Late, could you take that farther? Because I think from like a late place, they would then say, oh, you're not articulate and you're not very intelligent, or whatever, okay? Yet there's a whole complexity of nuance and profundity and wisdom. I mean, you're a brilliant teacher and a highly respected teacher. How do you articulate that? And if someone wants to connect with it in a way that they can derive your gifts, how do they do it?
So we start with a simple question first.
That's kind of an early way to do it, isn't it? You dive into the core of it, that's what matters, right?
It is. Yeah. And I really struggle with that, and part of the time I'm telling myself, stupid, they ask you a question, you ought to be able to say something. Weren't you the one who did all this writing or whatever? It can sometimes take me a while to really get a sense of what's inside, so that I can articulate something and articulate it so that it conveys what's inside, as opposed to giving some more simplistic kind of statement. And so sometimes I'll need the sort of time and space to go off and be able to connect with myself, which I don't necessarily do with somebody else, except maybe another early, or maybe an inner, where I just sense that they can hold whatever it is, the sort of messiness before the words are formed. I don't know. Probably I'll say more as we go on. Sometimes I'll need like a phrase from somebody, and then that opens up sort of the pathway inside. And then there are a lot of words, but until I get touched or feel touched in that way, whether it's music or just looking inside myself or by somebody's presence or words, it feels like I can't say anything. Not that I don't want to. I want to very much, but it's as though it's not there in a useful way. And so when I look at the Lates talking back and forth and bantering the way they did, I'm both jealous and annoyed and thinking, how come you can't do that?
I'm going to play a little bit of role of just sharing some theory about early, but I just where listening here is notice, I mean, there is a piece of kind of playfulness, childlikeness, you know, I mean, that's a part here. I think one of the tricky things for earlies is that because middles and lates tend to separate work and play, that easily is interpreted as not being serious. And so we can choose not to let that really show because we're not going to be respected for that. Yet because the primary intelligence that we're accessing our gifts from and our liveness from is the imaginal, it's sort of like, you know, for me to be working most powerfully professionally, I want to have my shoes off, I want to be laughing, I want to be sitting on the elephant. Okay? And I would have done that the first day everybody was here, except that it would be hard for the other personality styles to be sort of okay with the fact that, you know, you wouldn't trust that I appreciate your personality style if I'd done that. But it's also true as an early, that that's not play as opposed to work. That there's where the work most powerfully has its seed. And if we can make a space that's safe to do that, we will. The test for all of us, through all of this, I mean, hopefully, as we've been listening to these different temperaments, is that I would make the argument, now playing from an integral place, not talking as the early, is that I think a fascinating part of our time is the degree to which we need to be drawing on early, middle, and late sensibilities simultaneously within the same system. It used to work to go, there's R&D, there's manufacturing, there's, you know, there's the folks doing the marketing, and they're in different departments, they don't talk to each other, there's walls between them. And I think hopefully as you've listened to each of these whole territories of reality, they have wonderful interlocking parts, but they are profoundly different in some very fundamental ways. It's like getting at, whoa, they are profoundly different, fundamental, and how much of our task of being able to hold the full creative complexity and the richness and address the nature of the questions that are challenges in our time has to do with the ability that we can hold that full complexity. So in yourselves, as you're thinking from the morning, a lot is to play with. I mean, as early as here, a lot of us are in a university setting, you're in a healthcare setting, you're in arts administrators, are not normally early access environments. Earlies traditionally have been things like visual artists and not had a whole lot to do with the rest of culture. In that we're playing in environments where a lot of the time, a lot of the reward, but a whole lot of the absolute pain in the butt and the ineffectiveness comes from the fact that we're trying to be in environments where middles and late have as important a roles as our own. And I would say, I assume that's the case for each of you as well, from more late access place, from more middle access place, from more early access place. What is it we have to understand about each other, and how do we create environments that will work for earlies, middles, and lates in that full complexity? And I think that's much of our challenge, how to articulate it, how to hold it, how to be with it, and how to create contexts that work and all of that.